American forces strike Pacific after Trump WMD move. Direct hit. Missiles bombard U.S. enemy in Pacific. Casualties reported. Big action as U.S. steps up strikes off Venezuela.
Here again, we've been focused, and here we've been clear. If you're working for a designated terrorist organization and you bring drugs to this country in a boat, we will find you and we will sink you. Let there be no doubt about it. President Trump can and will take decisive military action as he sees fit.
If this were a war, that would be one of the worst wars. I believe they killed, over the last 5 or 6 years, per year, 200 to 300,000 people. You hear about 100,000, which is a lot of people, but the number is much higher than that. That's been proven. And they've destroyed a lot of families, because when they lose a child, or even if their child is heavily addicted, you lose that family. The family will never be the same. That's why today I'm taking one more step to protect Americans from the scourge of deadly fentanyl flooding into our country. With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is what it is. No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. But these are a direct military threat to the United States of America. They're trying to drug out our country. And you can look throughout history. Look at China when they were loaded up with drugs. They were suffering greatly, and others were able to take them over. And other countries also. They're trying to drug out our country, and we're reversing it rapidly, actually.
The United States military has carried out a fresh round of deadly strikes on vessels it says were involved in drug trafficking, killing 8 people in international waters of the Eastern Pacific Ocean, according to U.S. Southern Command. The operation, conducted on December 15, targeted 3 boats allegedly operated by groups the U.S. has designated as terrorist organizations. Southern Command said intelligence indicated the vessels were traveling along known narcotics smuggling routes and actively engaged in trafficking operations. In a statement posted on X, U.S. Southern Command said the strikes were executed under the direction of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as part of an ongoing campaign known as Operation Southern Spear. The military said 3 people were killed on the first boat, 2 on the second, and 3 on the third. While the Pentagon did not release evidence detailing the alleged criminal activity, it shared video footage showing a vessel moving through open water before being struck and exploding. The latest operation brings the reported death toll from U.S. strikes on suspected drug smuggling boats to at least 95 people since early September, according to U.S. officials. The most recent previous strike occurred on December 4th in the Eastern Pacific, when 4 people were killed aboard a suspected narcotics vessel, Southern Command said at the time. The expanding campaign has prompted growing concern and scrutiny from lawmakers in Washington.
Okay, it was a very unsatisfying briefing. I asked Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, would he let every member of Congress see the unedited videos of the September 2nd strike? His answer, we have to study it. Well, in my view, they've studied it long enough. Congress ought to be able to see it. I told him that every member of Congress, so many members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, had a right to see it, wanted to see it, and should see it. In terms of Venezuela, I asked them what their strategy is and what they were doing. Again, did not get satisfying answers at all.
The video that I saw last week, I believe the American people deserve to see. And even if you would argue, well, there are sources and methods, I'm not sure I accept that argument, but sure as hell, at least members of Congress out to sea because they all have appropriate clearances. And it's a little strange where administration officials say, well, we can release edited versions of videos that they like to brag about, but then not at least show the immediate moments up to and including the second strike that took place on September 2nd. But how you can suddenly say, well, we're going to release videos of the boat and then our strike action, but we're not willing to release the video when the survivors are identified before the strike takes place, in my mind, doesn't pass any kind of smell test.
The Trump administration has formally informed Congress that it considers the United States to be in an armed conflict with drug cartels, a designation officials say began with the first strike on September 2nd. According to CNN, U.S. forces conducted a follow-up strike that same day in the Caribbean after an initial attack failed to kill everyone on board a suspected drug boat. Some Democratic lawmakers and legal experts have argued that such actions could raise serious legal and ethical concerns, including potential violations of international law. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said on Monday that all U.S. senators would receive a classified briefing on the strikes. Quote, "The American people deserve oversight. We intend to deliver it," end quote, Schumer said in a post on X. Separate classified briefings for House lawmakers are also expected to be led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and other senior national security officials, according to sources familiar with the plans.
I think it's an escalation. You could look at just that and say, well, what about the rationale for that? But it's all part of a pattern. You know, the boat strikes, the threats, land invasion could be next, seizing the oil tanker. So it is an escalation, and it continues to demonstrate Congress needs to take this up. We haven't had a single public hearing either in foreign relations or armed services.
Their claims that this is about going after drugs or holding people accountable for drugs is just a bunch of nonsense. It's a cover story. And what happened with the ship is an example of how that's just a cover story. The real goal here is clearly regime change in Venezuela and accomplishing regime change by force. And if that is the case, this requires obviously congressional action under the War Powers Resolution.
Administration officials have described those killed in the strikes as unlawful combatants, asserting that the military has the authority to carry out lethal action without prior judicial review. This claim is reportedly based on a classified Justice Department legal finding, which has not been made public. Beyond narcotics enforcement, the military campaign coincides with a broader pressure strategy against Venezuela. In recent months, the U.S. has deployed thousands of troops and a carrier strike group to the Caribbean region and imposed new sanctions targeting shipping companies and vessels accused of transporting Venezuelan oil.
Because yesterday they committed an absolutely criminal and illegal act when they proceeded with a military assault, kidnapping, and robbery like pirates of the Caribbean.
A vessel, a ship designated as purely mercantile, operating strictly on commercial terms, registered as entirely civil and definitively privately owned, a ship whose mission was solely one of peace and legitimate international trade, that was violently attacked, boarded, and seized by force just as it was approaching the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean.
It wasn't on the coast of Venezuela. It was already much further north of Trinidad and Tobago, heading towards the island of Grenada, already entering the Atlantic, and the common people of the United States, they know this.
The destiny of Venezuela and United Star.
At this very hour, as I'm speaking to you all, the crew members of that particular vessel, of that ship, that boat, the 1.9 million barrels of oil that were being transported to international markets, which were paid for in Venezuela, because anyone who extracts oil pays for it first. The people involved are now kidnapped. They are missing and nobody knows where they are.
The individuals comprising the ship's crew were forcibly abducted, and the entire vessel itself was subsequently taken by force. And then they have inaugurated a new era, the era of criminal naval piracy in the Caribbean.
So Venezuela rejects in all its parts this criminal piracy action against the entire Caribbean. I have already given sufficient instructions for all necessary legal and diplomatic actions to be taken and for measures to be adopted, because Venezuela will secure all vessels to guarantee the free trade of its oil to the world. After this commercial break, we will be right back, but it is very important because right here we have 500. I had a very long and significant conversation with our elder brother, our dear friend, the brave President Vladimir Putin from Russia. The spirit of anti-colonialism, we carry it deep within our blood. And he was anti-imperialist, you see, because, well, let me tell you. He told me, among many other things, we had quite a long discussion. He told me, I want to convey to you my deepest admiration for the remarkable example of bravery shown by the people of Venezuela, considering the extremely challenging circumstances they have been forced to confront and overcome. Sí, and I want you to know that we invariably support the Venezuelan process, President Maduro, and your efforts to defend your national sovereignty and the peace of the entire South American region until victory always. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you.
Last week, U.S. forces seized a sanctioned oil tanker off Venezuela's coast, a move that followed fresh sanctions announced by Washington. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who has been charged with narco-terrorism in the United States, has rejected the U.S. allegations and claimed the real objective of the military operations is to destabilize his government and force him from power. Meanwhile, President Trump has defended the strikes as a necessary escalation to curb the flow of illegal drugs into the U.S., warning that further action, including potential land-based operations, could follow, though no details have been provided. As Congress prepares for closed-door briefings, questions continue to mount over the scope, legality, and long-term consequences of the U.S. military's expanding role in counter-narcotics operations across the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific.
We want peace, nothing more. But peace with sovereignty, peace with equality, peace with liberty. We don't want the peace of slaves, nor do we want colonial peace. Colonies never, slaves never.
Liberty, republic, peace with dignity, that is peace.